1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Check, 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 check. 1, 2. You good? All right.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to our town hall meeting today. Thank you for joining me. Let's see who we have in the audience here. Let's see, who are our freshmen? Raise your hand if you're a freshman. Give it up for the freshmen. All right. If you are a sophomore, raise your hand. Let's give it up for our sophomores. Fantastic. Juniors, where are you? All right. Coming down the home stretch. And seniors? I will be shaking your hands very, very shortly across that stage. So it is wonderful to have you here this morning. This is a conversation. So again, if you're feeling a little nervous, no, this is just a conversation. It's always good to hear our students' perspective. It's important for us to hear our students' perspectives, teachers, administrators, parents, and community members. So throughout the year, I hold these kinds of meetings so that we can hear your point of view. This is a time for you to ask questions, but it's also a time for you to give suggestions and for you to speak your mind and for you to talk about those things that you've been thinking about to make Baltimore County Public Schools even better. Okay, so this is your time. So again, this is a time for us to listen, and it's also a time for us to kind of clarify anything for you that you've been thinking about. Before we go any further, we have to thank your teachers and administrators for bringing you here and for organizing. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for being here. You can't just get here. It takes some coordination, right? So we want to thank them for being here. As you know, the focus this far this year has been on literacy. And that's been my focus since the beginning, since I've started. And again, literacy is so important because it's not just reading and writing, right? It's not the way that we would traditionally think about literacy, about just reading and writing. But it's reading, writing, listening, speaking, and thinking across the disciplines. It's important for you to think like a mathematician, speak and read the material as mathematicians, as historians, as scientists as well. Many times, and those of you who are juniors and seniors, and even if you've taken the PSAT, you know with the PSAT and SAT now, it's not just reading a passage and then answering questions, is it? Right? You're having to analyze charts and graphs and look across material and synthesize and evaluate information. It's not that easy to do. And so we want, beginning at very young ages for our children, I want you to be able to learn how to do that in science, in mathematics, in social studies, so that our kids are fully prepared and so that you are fully prepared for what you are venturing into. It's important for you to identify bias. Think about how many ways you get your news. Start shouting some of those out. How many ways do you get your news? Social media. What kinds of social media? Instagram. Of course, Instagram. See, I would have said, like Twitter. And I guess you get your information from Twitter, but it sounds like Instagram is the hottest thing going, right? So but can you always believe everything that you read? No. So again, it's about identifying bias and being able to synthesize information in a way so that you can form your own opinions. And then you can act on those opinions. And that's what you'll need to do as you venture into college, as you venture into the workforce. Remember that we want you to graduate not only with a diploma, but also with a resume, so that you are building your skill set along the way. We want you to learn not only how to read, write, think, compute, and behave in socially acceptable ways, but we also want you to be able to have those soft skills that matter too. So I talked about identifying bias, but it's also important for you to learn those interview skills, those soft skills like looking someone in the eye, having a firm handshake, being able to have the grit and determination to see a project through. So if you've noticed with your teachers offering you more projects in your classes, that's that project-based learning, because when you have a project, you have to learn how to work together, even with sometimes people you don't want to work with or you are uncomfortable with, right? But in the workforce, you have to do the same thing. That's real life. Sometimes we have to work with people who make us a little uncomfortable, but we have to figure out how to find a middle ground so that we can move the work forward and get that work done. So those soft skills are just as important as those standardized skills that we have for all of our learners. Another priority area for this year has been school climate. And so when we're speaking about climate, climate is the way that you feel when you walk into a building. I can feel the climate of this building when I walk into the building. It feels welcoming, not just because they handed me a congratulatory plant, right, when I came in, which was really well received and welcomed, but it's also because of the smiles that greeted me at the door, the way that you feel when you walk into a building. That's the climate. All of our parents and teachers and you should feel good when you're coming into your school. We don't want any kids to feel intimidated or bullied or unsafe. That's not why your parents send you to school. That's not why your guardians send you to school. That's not how you want to feel when you get here. So that's why another priority area is about school climate, making sure that all kids from our babies all the way through to 12th grade, right, where you feel welcomed in school. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's start getting some of your opinions. I know that we have a couple of mics on both sides. I want to hear your suggestions, and I want to hear some of your questions as well. So who's first? Okay, I see a hand in the back.
Hello.
Hello.
I am Noah from Patapsco. I'm a 12th grader.
Hi, Noah.
Hi. My question is, would it be possible for students to be part of developing a plan for active shooter scenarios?
So thank you for that. We actually have a new system that will be put into place called the ALICE program, and it's really about teachers and administrators and having choices about whether or not to lock down or whether or not to take students out. God forbid if we do have a situation that is unsafe like that, where we have an active shooter. And then that way, students are trained in that as well. It's about making that choice in that moment. Right now, our procedure is to lock down, right? But there are times that if you have an exit and you can take that exit, then you'll be able to do that. We're just about to start that training right now, and so that we can have more choices for our teachers who may unfortunately be in that situation. But let me just say this, that we're doing every single thing to make sure that we don't have that situation. So that in Baltimore County, we have, how we have the Raptor system for our visitors who have to come in and have to be identified, right? We're getting more people in place. Fortunately, in the county executive's budget, he has proposed more school resource officers for schools as well. These kinds of things deter someone from coming in and doing something harmful to our students in that way. We make sure that when we're building buildings that we're keeping in mind those safety features that we need in buildings as well, because your primary things that you want to make sure that we stay safe. And besides that, we want to also make sure that if someone is thinking of harming himself or others, that we're catching those thoughts and those behaviors early as well. That's why we need people to build relationships with our students so that that person will have somebody to talk to and hopefully avoid those kinds of behaviors and that type of danger. But thank you for your question. Very good. Next question. Back there. Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is
Hi.
Lygia Mardari. I'm a sophomore at Towson High School. You mentioned that a big goal is ensuring that all schools have this welcoming environment. I was wondering, as there are many schools throughout Baltimore County, how do you plan on ensuring that every school has this environment that you hope to
Thank
achieve?
you. Good question. Well, first of all, it's set in policy. And remember that what gets governed gets done. And so that is one of our policies as well. I believe it's policy 1270 that talks about all students being in a welcoming environment. Another policy that's related to that is our equity policy. So regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, regardless of your ethnicity, that you should feel welcomed in school. So that starts, again, right at the very beginning, the front office staff, right? How we engage our parents. Another part of welcoming is to make sure that we're talking about everyone and all students. Remember that we serve students from 117 different countries who speak 94 different languages. So another part of feeling welcome is to make sure that we're reaching out in the various languages and making sure that the material that we're sending home is available in various languages as well. if I speak another language other than English and it's not, and I don't have the material in my native language, then I don't necessarily feel welcomed, right? So that has a lot to do with it. And our teachers work very hard every day to make sure that our students feel welcomed in school. So thank you for your question. Good job. Someone else? Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Noah. I'm from Overly High School. I'm a junior. First, I would like to congratulate you on your new superintendent position.
Thank you.
With the recent uptake in my classmates' disruptive behavior, over the last few weeks, I've noticed how not motivated they are to complete classwork compared to recent years when students return from spring break rested and motivated. What are your thoughts on the recent changes to the school calendar and possible changes in the future?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Good job. So you're saying that their lack of motivation has everything to do with spring break? Maybe that's part of it. I think everybody needs a break every once in a while. I think that there is a lot that goes into motivation, though. Sometimes motivation is intrinsic, other times it's extrinsic, right? So sometimes we do need a break so that we can recharge our batteries. There are some who might call that kind of sharpening the saw, right? Where we have to take some time to sharpen the saw. And so this year, we know that our spring break was shortened a bit. And so next year, I think the new legislation has it so that we can extend the school year if we need to by an additional 5 days if we need to. And so then that may help us to go back and revisit the calendar so that we're not squeezed so tightly. But I would suggest to you that there are other factors that go into motivation, right? So that kids need to know that they're doing well and that they can do well in school. There are other reasons that are going into not feeling motivated or not wanting to come to school. So I think we have to get to the root cause of why a student might feel that way. Why a student may feel like he or she doesn't want to come to school or doesn't want to necessarily participate. So that's when the administration gets together to figure out how do we motivate kids, especially in the fourth quarter, right? So now it's spring has sprung. And the weather, it's very nice outside today, and people would rather be someplace else. So that means we have to work a little bit harder to make inside the school just as fun and engaging as it is outside of school. Thank you for your question. Someone on this side. Let's come over on this side.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Carlos. I'm a senior from Kenwood.
Hi, Carlos.
I'm an IB diploma candidate.
Very
The county is intending to expand and improve the International Baccalaureate program. What resources are you planning to allocate for Kenwood?
Yes. Oh, thank you for your question. Just as you said, we are planning to expand the IB programs. It is a rigorous program, so if you're not familiar with IB, again, this is where Carlos, for instance, will graduate with an IB kind of seal on his a certificate as he graduates, because this is another level. So you know how you take your AP courses, there are IB courses as well that infuse more rigor into the program. Because we have just been able to get a $15 million magnet grant, we are able to expand our IB programs and even expand them to the elementary schools, where we start early with many of our students who are starting in elementary school to participate in IB program. They're in the planning stages right now, and then they'll increase. When it comes to Kenwood, Kenwood has a specialized IB program as well. So we want to make sure that we're infusing more resources. Again, given the greater funds that we have, more resources to even beef up that program even more. So thank you for your question. Someone on this side. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Calandros, and
Caitlin.
I'm a senior in Sparrows Point High School. And one of my questions is, how do you plan to protect LGBT students in the community and outside of school?
How do I plan to
Protect LGBT students.
protect? Okay, very good. So again, I think that it goes back to what anchors us. And if we're serious about educating all students, all has to mean all. And I had this conversation with one of our music supervisors yesterday, Mr. Shane Jensen, who is a staunch advocate for advocating for LGBT students, right? To make sure that all does mean all. So right now, just in that case, in that instance, we are developing a manual of sorts so that we're respecting all of our students with proper terminology and sensitive vocabulary, right? That would make sure that all students feel valued and protected. We're helping teachers through this kind of guidance and with the administrators as well, with guidance with what to do in situations that maybe they haven't had to handle before. And uncomfortable situations maybe for students who are LGBT students and students who are not. So we're having those new conversations, and what we have to remember is that respect is the anchor. And so if we keep respect in mind, then we can get to that place where we can have those courageous conversations with one another, and we can protect all of our students, regardless of their preference. So thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Morning.
Good
My name
morning.
is Rodney Gross. I'm a junior. I attend Oakley High School. Congratulations on your new appointment.
Thank you.
And as an avid advanced placement student athlete, I'm concerned with the recruitment of STEM teachers and their longevity at Oakley and other predominantly African American high schools.
Yes. Good question. Very good question. We're finding that we do have to partner with our universities and to make sure that we're recruiting teachers in the STEM fields as well. And so I know that our Department of Human Resources, they're going really out of their way to make sure that we're, first of all, having highly qualified teachers in the STEM areas. Many times, our mathematicians and our engineers are in those fields who have a desire to teach. We just have to recruit them for teaching as well. But we also have to make sure that we recognize that STEM has to start early. Again, so we promote a lot of reading at the elementary level, which is fantastic. And you know I'm a staunch advocate for reading. But we also, when it comes to reading across the content areas, and we're building those skills, we have to start engineering kinds of concepts very early on. So we do that even through some Lego work. I was just at Seneca Elementary School yesterday, and they have a new kind of Lego board. Again, starting very early with students building and constructing and seeing the possibilities and being excited about technology and mathematics and seeing how that might, how it might be fun and not just math. Sometimes people think about math and their faces go down, right? But math can be fun, and those engineering concepts can be fun. So we have to start very early on. That's how we build the pipeline towards STEM, making sure that we have the highly qualified teachers and making sure that we also have students who are interested in STEM so that we have a full pipeline. Because we know that we have some pretty big world problems out there that we have to solve. In terms of climate change, and we have infrastructure needs as well, we're going to need architects and engineers. We'll need mathematicians out there and scientists who can help us to fix some of these world problems. So we have to start very early on and get our highly qualified folks in to teach our babies as well. Thank you for your question. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm Sabria Abdullah from Eastern Tech. I'm in 9th grade. How are you going to ensure that we feel safe in our school and we are safe without us feeling like inmates?
Inmates, okay. Yeah. Good question. So I've been asked the question quite often about metal detectors. Speaking of, anytime someone says inmate, usually they pair that with, why don't you have metal detectors? And so my thought on that is that I'm not quite sure how practical metal detectors would be. And you know for yourselves that anyone who is really determined to bring a weapon to school, they don't necessarily have to go through the metal detector, right? They can find other ways, other windows, other doors. And then practically speaking, what would it mean for the bottleneck that would mean for entering into school? And then you have to have someone who can man that location. You can't just have regular school personnel manning that location, because if there is a situation, you would need an armed officer or guard there to man it. So I'm not quite sure of the practical nature of that. That's being debated back and forth, and perhaps there are other ways, but I'm not convinced that that is the way, because again, just as you said, our schoolhouses are institutions of learning. And so we don't want a contradiction between an institution of learning and the thought back there about the welcoming environment. I can't remember your name. All the way in the back, she talked about a welcoming environment. Tell me your name again. Lucia. Remember you talked about a welcoming environment. We do want a welcoming environment. So I believe that there's a balance. And I believe that there's a way to do this and do it well. Certainly the way that we are doing it. The way that we are starting. Making sure that we're having all of our visitors check in. Making sure that everyone is identified. We do have to do a better job of making sure that all of our students wear your student badges. You probably, do you know where yours is? Yeah, right, exactly. So we're going to revisit that. But everyone has to be identified so that if there's someone who isn't identified, then you will know this person doesn't have a badge, this person doesn't look like they should be here. So if you see something, you can say something in that way. Our teachers are out in hallways, our administrators are out in hallways as well to locate to see if anybody is who's a stranger in the building so that they can be taken care of as well. And just to make sure that we continue to be vigilant. We all have eyes and ears where we can see, where if we see something, we can say something that's out of the way. But our primary goal is the goal of learning. And our primary goal is to make sure that we have a warm and welcoming environment. But we need to do so through making sure that when we're constructing buildings, we're constructing them for safety. Making sure that there's kind of a lock-off place where when visitors enter with our new buildings, as visitors enter, many of our elementary schools in particular, you enter into a certain area of the office. You can't get to the other part of the school until you go through that way first. For our existing buildings, making sure that we have in place a staunch visitor system as well, and that we are taking attendance regularly. We know who's in the school, and we're not just letting people walk through, right? So that's how we can maintain that type of balance. It's not just, and to make sure that we have a connection, we keep our connection with our school resource officers as well. I'm ecstatic by the increase in our school resource officers. And all of you have resource officers in your schools, and you know that they're not just about law enforcement. Many of you know your SROs, right? You know them, so that they're not just an officer with this, that you can't approach. We have officers in our building who build those relationships with you, whom you can speak to, you say hi to, you say good morning to, right? And just their mere presence helps to deter problematic behavior as well, and helps us to maintain that balance. Good question. Sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Mitchell, and I go to Eastern Technical High School.
Very good.
And my question is the time in the morning affecting our students' learning ability due to the late nights of athletics and late schoolwork and the early mornings of just attempting to make the bell?
Yeah, good question. So I had this question. I posed this question to my Student Advisory Council. And I asked about, because the same thing came up about a lot of the homework, especially for our AP courses, athletics, other kinds of nighttime or evening activities, and that seemed to be keeping kids up. And then we extended the conversation. Because if you're talking about looking at the school day and pushing back the start of the school day, it is a complex issue because it involves transportation, it involves pushing back the start times of sometimes daycare, sometimes athletics. The start times of athletics would have to be pushed back as well. You would really be talking about a 15 to 30 minute pushback at best, probably. And so when you're talking about 15 minutes to 30 minutes, you also have to think about what would be the benefit. But I've asked this of my Student Advisory Council, what's really keeping you up at night? Is it homework keeping you up at night? Or is it social media keeping you up at night? Oh, yes, I see some of that. Or is it both? Okay, so we do have to keep in mind that you do need your rest. And so all I would ask is that as we're studying this, and we have a task force looking at our start times, so not only just whether or not we should push back the start of the school day to allow our students more rest, but we also are looking at whether or not we need to extend the school day, because Baltimore County has the shortest school day in all of Maryland. We have the shortest school day in all of every other jurisdiction in Maryland. So we're looking at whether or not we need to extend the school day as well. And we're looking at bell times and schedules and that kind of thing. But while we're doing that, I would ask you to do one thing for me. Go to bed. Go to bed, okay? Because I know that if you're doing your homework, that's one thing. But then this might sound a little bit like a mom, but I am a mom, and I do have teenagers too. So I know that it's not just homework keeping you up. It's also your phones that are keeping you up as well. I see your heads nodding. The good news is that the camera's facing this way, so they can't really see your heads nodding. But I can see your heads nodding. Just make sure that you're getting your proper rest, because it is important. It affects everything. It affects your mood. It affects how you think, right? It affects everything, your attitude. So you do need to get your proper rest, and you don't need to be up 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning texting or on Instagram, right? So I do want you to get your proper rest. This is a really good question, because we are studying this right now to determine how we can do so, but without necessarily a huge disruption to our entire enterprise of making sure that kids are transported safely, and the way that we're starting our other after-school and extracurricular activities as well. Thank you for your question. Let's go to this. I think I called on this side twice. Let's go to this side right there.
My name's Alea.
Hi,
I'm in
Alea.
the 9th grade, and I attend the Crossroads Center.
Okay.
My question is basically about African American students. We have to work 10 times harder than a normal student. I want to know what's your advice on how we should go about feeling comfortable in the classrooms.
Okay, thank you for your question. Again, it goes back to that whole theory of all meaning all. And I know that in our executive teams and with our principals as well, we have begun a lot of our equity work. The good news is that there isn't a gap between our black and white students when it comes to our graduation rate. But we still know that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to not only African American students, but students of color. We're talking about various ethnicities, and we're looking at the difference in our gender gap and achievement in various areas as well. So when it comes to all students, it's about that connection. It's the connection that we have. And so my connection was with so many of my teachers. I had to find teachers that I could connect with, who could understand what I was going through, so that I could figure out how to even press forward even more. And we want you to know that you have to press. It doesn't, for whatever your race, your gender, your ethnicity, you have to press, and you can't give up. And we know that when it comes to relationships, we want to make sure that you are able to connect with students in your school whom you feel comfortable with, and you have to continue to press forward. But in terms of all of our work, every kid has a story. Every kid has a story. And so we are continuing our equity work and making it a priority in our system, because I believe that it begins with our administrators first, and those who are executive team will understand then how schoolhouses need to value equity in all of our schools, so that it emanates really from all of our teachers, knowing that we are reaching out and valuing the story of every single one of our students. So in terms of what we're doing, we're continuing our equity work. Thank you for your question. Okay, yes, sir, right over here. Yes.
Hi, my name is Shawnaga. I'm a 10th grader at Towson High School. What's your view on aging school infrastructure and dealing with overcrowding?
Yeah. So I believe that every student needs and should have the benefit of a 21st century learning environment. Every child should have the benefit of a 21st century learning environment. Again, we do have aging schools. Again, the relationships that we build in those schools are most important. The instruction that happens in those schools, that's most important. But we need to make sure that our teachers have the tools that they need, and as students, you have the tools that you need as well. In terms of overcrowding, I know that my view on this is to make sure that we're not having so many kids in a room that you can't move, you can't breathe, you can't get around, and it's also more difficult for teachers to get to you. So my push will be to also reduce class sizes as we continue from budget to budget to budget. I can teach 38 kids in my classroom, I have, but I can teach 28 kids a lot easier, right? So it's a lot easier for me to make those personal relationships. So as we continue along and we request funds from our county and state officials, that will be a priority of this administration to make sure that we're reducing class sizes so that our class sizes are more meaningful and reasonable for our teachers as well. Thank you for your question. I'm going to jump back over here, and I promise I'll come over there. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Tamara Stanford, and I attend Chesapeake High School. I'm a freshman.
Hi.
My question is, how can students who are involved with extracurricular activities and sports get the same type of privileges with students in AVID and things when they can't really do it because of their jam-packed schedule?
So what is it that you're asking that you're missing that you would like to see?
How can they do it in the classrooms during their school day? How can teachers or guidance counselors help them?
Okay, thank you. So one thing I love about AVID, I do love the fact that AVID teaches those skills that you will use for a lifetime. Note-taking. So how many people are in AVID or have been through it? Thank you. Yeah. So, so you live by Cornell notes, right? Yeah. And it teaches you organization, and it teaches you how to structure your time. And I believe that our athletes deserve, and just all of our students deserve, the benefit of that type of instruction. To that end, we have started with our 6th graders having the benefit, all of our 6th graders having the benefit of AVID-like study skills and that type of structure as well. So it's not just our athletes, but I believe all of our students need that. I know that when I went to college, nobody taught me how to study. No one really taught me how to structure my time. No one told me the value of what does it mean to sit up front, to sit in the front of the classroom. And AVID does teach you those kinds of things. And I believe that all of our students need the benefit of that kind of instruction very early on. So we're starting with our 6th graders, building that in. So if you're an athlete or if you're in the chess club, right, you still have that benefit of knowing what kinds of things will help you succeed over time in college or in your profession or in your workforce. You still have to have grit. You still have to have determination. You still have to structure your time. You still need a planner of sorts. You have to write it down or type it in, right? So that you can have structured time. And you still have to know how to take notes and take mental notes and come back and revisit and how to annotate and highlight. So thank you for your question. Good question. That's building it in very early. Yes, ma'am, all the way in the back. Yes.
Hello,
Hi.
I am a freshman from Carver Center. My
Okay.
name is Hannah Yu. And I have a question about kind of use in technology use in schools. How would you alter or help with that idea?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not good at talking.
No, you have a really good question. What's good to know is that just 2 board meetings ago, the Board of Education approved devices at the high school level as well. So all of our students will have the benefit of having a one-to-one device so that you don't have to wait for the cart, the laptop cart. You don't have to go to a computer lab or wait for kind of a rotation of the lab. You will have the benefit of your own device. Not you seniors, sorry. But but for our freshmen and through juniors, you will have the benefit of your own device. And we feel that that's important for a couple of reasons. Not so that you can be on your device all day long. No. Not so that you can go out and search whatever you want. We're talking about the benefit of an instructional tool, just like you have any other tool that you use. Just like you would bring a protractor to class when you need one, you would have this tool as well, so that you can access resources in real time and not have to wait, so that you can have the benefit of your work right in front of you in a 21st century way that's right there for you, and you don't have to wait. And again, we want to have that in your hands right away. So that contract was just approved 2 board meetings ago. So those who are, for the upcoming school year, you will have the benefit of that technology in your hands. We still don't believe, and I still don't believe, that there's no substitute for a quality teacher. All right? So the technology has never been intended, and is not intended today, to substitute a teacher. I am a teacher, and I know that I can use tools to help teach you, but there's nothing that will replace this. I need to be able to look in your eyes and have a conversation with you, and then we need to talk about things. And so I will use the technology as a tool to further along the instruction, but I'm not going to use that tool to replace my instruction. That's not the goal. So I'm excited about the technology that's coming our way, especially to our high schools. We already have 3 comprehensive high schools who have the technology and who can help us and help us teach us how to blend in that learning, so that we have blended learning. We have face-to-face instruction, and we have the use of technology as well, but without necessarily substitute. But we have a blended learning environment where we have tools and resources that we need for every single one of our kids. Thank you for your question. This side. Yes, sir.
My name is Tariq Davis. I'm a senior at Lock River High School, and I wanted to understand how you're going about training your administrators and teachers to build better relationships with students, so that we as students can get the best out of our learning environments.
Yeah, good question. You sound like a teacher, Tariq. There's a smile. I knew I could get one out of you. In terms of, again, that's fundamental, I believe, for all of our teachers and administrators. So when they're coming to the table to interview, those are some of the beginning questions that we ask, right? In terms of how do you build relationships with students. It's fundamental. That's primary. That's one of the basics of making sure that we're connecting with our kids. It's not just about managing the budget. It's not just about managing staffing. It's not just about managing the transportation and managing classrooms. But the basics of the job, and my job, is to make sure that we're building relationships with students. That's one of the reasons why we're here today. We have to make sure that we know you and we know your story. So that is one of the things that we look for, and in our professional development, we make sure that we build that in. So especially for our new teachers and our new administrators, they go through a year-long induction training. So it's kind of an on-the-job training, if you will. That when we're building that in, we build in that induction, the equity training, and how do we reach out to all of our students as well. That's part of the requirement of becoming an administrator. You have to go through that professional development so that we know that everyone has the basics and that they have that standard and they're meeting that standard. Thank you for your question, Terry. All right. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
My name's Kayla Newberger from Dundalk High School, and my question is, with literacy being a major focus this year, what are the next steps to build upon this topic in the high schools next year?
Yeah, excellent question. So your principals, your assistant principals, and your department chairmen have all had extensive training in terms of literacy. What I don't want to see is that we stop here, right? So we see that right now we have more momentum when it comes to reading and writing across the content areas. So I can see that. And if you're on Twitter, you can follow that on Twitter as well. You can see it. It has taken off unbelievably, and I'm so encouraged the way that it has taken off. Well, it's not just reading for the sake of reading. So this year we've had a greater awareness. So as we go deeper, we're looking at complex text, and we're having students read across those disciplines. Now we're having to go a little bit deeper in our training and understanding of how to have that disciplinary literacy and how to really move that forward, right? So that is the next level, especially at the high schools, so that in every one of your content classes. You are going deeper with disciplinary literacy, and we're seeing more reading and writing in each of your disciplines. That's on the way for high schools, and that's what the training entails right now. Thank you for your question. Anyone else on this side? Yes, sir.
Hi, good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
My name is Nikhil Harry. I'm from Parkville High School, and I'd like to congratulate you on your appointment as superintendent.
Thank you.
So, recently Michael Phelps has been in the news. He has been one of the best competitive swimmers and the most decorated Olympian. However, despite all of his amazing achievements, he has admitted to having depression and suicidal thoughts. So, I was wondering, what are your ideas to raise awareness for BCPS students with depression and other mental illnesses?
Great question. Yeah. Great question. Not just Michael Phelps. I think that The Rock just talked about depression as well. We know that it is an illness that is plaguing not only our children, but sometimes many of our adults as well. And so when I talk about moving our budget forward, again, we have to make sure that we're putting our funds where we see our needs. And so this year's budget really does that. That's why I call it People for Our People. We're in a people business. This is a people business. So we have to have people available to help our students talk through some of what they're thinking and what they're feeling. So that's why I've asked for additional pupil personnel workers, additional social workers, additional guidance counselors as well, school counselors, I should say, to make sure that we have the people available. Now, we're going to have those people in our buildings who will be available. But the question is, and this is something I would like for our students to ponder, for all of you to ponder as well, how do we get our students to utilize those resources? Because what I'm hearing is that sometimes students don't feel comfortable going to a counselor. You go to your counselor for your schedule, for a testing need or to help you with the college application. But I want our students, particularly at the high school level, to feel comfortable going to our counselors and our PPWs and our social workers with social emotional issues as well. Because if you're feeling depressed or if you're having suicidal thoughts, it's serious. And we want to take it seriously, and there are strategies to help. And there are ways that we can help, but we can't help if we don't know. So I would encourage our students, and we have such a caring staff. I want to reach out to anyone who's feeling depressed or anyone who is feeling that you may want to end your life. You have so much life ahead of you. You have so much life to live. And so you have to live through it, though. Right? My mother used to say, you can't get to the morning until you get through the night. So there are times when you have to get through that darkness. You have to get through the night, and the morning is on the other side of that. And we have people available who can help talk you through that to get to the morning. So I want to encourage you, if you're having those thoughts, please reach out to us. We have lots of people in our buildings, from your teachers, your paraeducators. We have staff, not just counselors, but find someone to connect with who can talk you through it. Fantastic question. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes.
Hi, my name's Matt, and do a half day at Sparrows Point High School and a half day at Salish Point Technical High School.
Okay.
And in recent months in my English class, I've been doing research about our educational system as like a country in a whole. And one of the areas I especially studied was DC public schools, and especially when Michelle Rhee became chancellor. And one of the things she found was the results from poor education was because of poor quality teachers. I was wondering, what does Baltimore County do to maintain or improve teacher quality in the classroom?
Yeah, good question. So again, all roads lead back to a high quality instruction. And that's where I do draw the line in the sand when it comes to, there is no substitute for high quality instruction. We have to maintain the best teaching every single day. Our teachers have a difficult job because they can't afford to have a bad day. right? That's what makes it so intense, because they can't afford to have a bad day. And so, because we have students in front of us every single day. And so regardless of other challenges, we can't afford to have a bad day. And so we know that our teachers work really hard, and when it comes to those who maybe are not, okay, we can't stand here and say that, well, we have every single one of our teachers working as hard as most of our teachers every day. We know that we probably have one or two who are not. And if that's the case, we do hold them accountable. We have what's called our Danielson framework where we evaluate our teachers on what we need to see in high-quality instruction. It's important that we see that in both formal observations and informal observations, so that we have evidence of that type of high-quality instruction. But I also say that when a teacher is struggling, we have to ask why, right? Our teachers are people too. So we have to ask why. Sometimes our teachers are teaching a new content, and maybe they are unfamiliar. Maybe they're teaching 4th grade this year instead of 2nd grade that they were used to. And maybe it's just different subject matter. Maybe they're teaching physics this year rather than, earth space, right? So we just want to make sure that they're familiar and that they're comfortable in their content. Then we have to be patient as we allow them some time to learn. Perhaps they're going through a personal situation. But we can't get to that patience and allowing for that type of patience if we don't know the situation. So it's incumbent upon our administrators to know our teachers well enough to know where they need help and support, because that's our starting point. Because ultimately, we want to support our teachers so that they can have high-quality instruction every single day. We want to balance that. We want to nurture. We want to make sure that we're supporting our teachers. And then if we also have some who are just resistant, who just really shouldn't be in the profession, then we're holding them accountable too, and we're coaching them through. Thank you for your question. Good question. Anyone else on this side? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so good morning and
Good
congratulations.
Morning. Thank you.
Christina, Overly, 11th grade.
Christina.
So I wanted to speak on construction at Overly. So unfortunately, we have flooding and we don't have new furniture, and there's other mishaps as well. And I just wanted to know what would be done to our school to make it more modern and fitting in a welcome environment for our students and staff.
Yeah. The physical environment matters. It goes back to the question over here, I think Towson High School question, right? That physical environment matters. So if you have flooding or if you have some issue with your building, it affects how you show up. It affects how you feel when you show up. And so we work very closely with our Office of Facilities as well as our administrators as well to see whether or not this is something that can be remedied, or is it something where we have to completely renovate. So that's the analysis that goes into that. There's a lot of work. We have an entire team to determine where's that flooding coming from. Is it coming because we have a pipe that burst that can be patched or can be fixed, right? And we don't want to patch it. We want to fix it, right? So we can fix that, and can that take care of it? Or do we have a plumbing issue where we have to renovate that area? So again, we have teams of people who actually work through that. I'm glad that you brought up that issue at Overly. We'll take a look at that right away. Thank you. Okay. Who hasn't asked the question yet? Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's you.
My name is Alyssa, and I am in the 11th grade at Towson High. I feel that we're all appreciative of the immense resources that are invested into our specialization programs in Baltimore County, but I am concerned about some of the soft skills, like you mentioned earlier, and the ones that seem to be left in the 20th century, such as my younger brother gets very excited about, like you were saying, the Lego board, and he codes in his elementary school, and that's very exciting, but being able to sign your name in cursive or pay your taxes when you come out of school, after you've gotten that engineering job, being able to support yourself in a real-world environment. So I was just curious what kind of programs, whether curriculum-based or just widely accessible outside of school programs, you have ideas about.
Good question. Very mature question. Excellent. Proud of you. So we can't forget the basics. You're absolutely right. And yes, we still teach cursive handwriting. For those who are wondering, yes, we do. Beginning in second grade, we still teach cursive handwriting. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Right? So we know that we have to make sure that we're progressive and that we're innovative and that we're moving forward and that we're using technology, but we can't forget the basics. And so those basics of learning how to compute and learning how to write, right? Those are still the basics that are important. And there are studies that talk about how ideas are concretized, right, in the memory even sometimes when you're handwriting them out. And I know that many times we are now prone to typing things out, or our thumbs are very strong, right? We have very, very strong thumbs because we're on our phones and we're typing things through our phones. But we also need to be able to utilize those fine motor skills, and we also need to be able to handwrite some things out. So the handwriting piece, the computing piece, and just those basic skills, we're starting very, very early with our young learners with those basic kinds of skills so that you're having a balance of instruction as you're moving forward. Excellent question. Very mature question. Thank you. All right, right back there. And I promise I'll come up here.
My name's Yara. I'm a junior at Patapsco High School.
Hi, Yara.
You stated that in order to ensure safety in schools that you want visitors to go through the main office. What are you going to do in order to ensure safety in schools that have trailers and open campuses where intruders can come inside the school without going through the main office?
Yeah. That's the reason why our camera system is so important, making sure that we have a system for students traveling back and forth among the relocatables as well. It can't just be happenstance. But those cameras are critically important so that we can see what's going on. We can see who's back there. We know that sometimes we have some activity back there that we should not have. So we do have a camera system in place where our office staff, they can see what's happening and they can see what's going on back there as well. So thank you for that question, because I failed to mention before that the number of cameras that we have in place throughout our schools, which helps us to keep schools safe as well. Thank you. Good question. Yes, Sarah. Did I skip the second one? Okay.
Good morning, Ms. White.
Good morning.
My name's Isaac. I go to Eastern Tech, and I'm in 11th grade. So, congratulations on your appointment as our new superintendent. But with that comes my question.
Sure.
So, when it's all said and done, what do you want people to remember about you the most from our students and from our teachers and staff?
Oh, thank you. It's probably the hardest question of the day. No, I think that a couple of things that I need you to know about me as your new superintendent. First of all, I care about you most. I care about you most. And I want you to know that you are special just the way that you are. You don't have to change for anybody. Unless you have a bad attitude. then change that. But you are special just the way that you are. My heart and soul is for children first. And I know those of you who are seniors, yes, okay, so maybe you're not children per se. You're young adults. But my heart has to do with young adults and our children as well. I believe in you. I talked about some of those world problems that we have facing us. We have climate change issues. I talk about many times, my mother has Alzheimer's. She's in the severe stages of Alzheimer's. It could reach epidemic proportions. We need you to solve some of these issues for us. We need you to solve some of the woes of the world, cancer, some of the infrastructure needs, engineering needs as well. And I believe in you, because what's great about our nation is that we're not just focused on the skill. We also emphasize creativity. That's how we've been able to be a premier nation, because we have that type of creativity. Think about the innovation that you have here. So when it comes to me, I will always be your champion, no matter what. And I will always keep high quality instruction as at the forefront of every single conversation. All roads lead back to instruction. So instruction has to be about those relationships that we're building. It has to be engaging and motivating, where you don't feel like putting your head down on your desk, right? Putting your hoodie over your head and putting your head down, that's not engaging instruction. That's not instruction at all. That's just time. that's passing. I don't want you just to pass the time. I want you to be excited about learning. And I know that many of you are here because you are excited about learning. And then, yes, I want us to be number one in literacy in the nation because I believe it's fundamental to every single thing that you're doing and that you're going to do. You're going to do tremendous things, but you can't do those tremendous things without being steeped in the fundamentals of what it will require and learning and understanding and reading and writing and thinking in whatever area you pursue. If you pursue the military, if you pursue the workforce, if you pursue college, you will need some of those basics. So those are the premier things that I want you to know about me, and that I will always be your champion. I promise I didn't plant Isaac with that question. I know that we're about to wrap up, but I'm glad that you asked that question. This responsibility I don't take lightly. And so people have asked me over the past 24 hours, are you happy? And I am. I am happy and I'm excited. I'm excited to work with all of you. That is tempered by the responsibility that I feel. It is an incredible responsibility, and I carry it with me every single day because my heart has to be for you. Thank you, Isaac, for that question. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of our time. I can't thank you enough for spending your time with me this morning. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your maturity. And I ask you not to let anything get in your way. Don't get distracted. Stay focused on your goals. Determine what it is that you want. And then make a plan to reach your destiny. Okay? You promise me that? And don't forget, do what? Go to bed. Go to sleep on time tonight. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you spending some time with me this afternoon. This is just a conversation between you and me. So we're not going to make it so formal. We will have an opportunity to hear your questions and your suggestions too. This is all about making Baltimore County Public Schools the best that we can be. And that we can't do without you and without your opinions. So let's see who we have here. Any sixth graders that we have here in the audience? Raise your hand. Very good. Let's hear it for our sixth graders. Seventh graders, where are you? Very good. Let's hear it for our seventh graders. Eighth grade. All right. On your way to high school. Very, very good. Thank you for joining us today. I just want to tell you a little bit about my focus areas so that we can get started on our questions. But remember that your questions don't have to be necessarily on these two areas. They can really be about anything. This is about how we can get better. So you can ask your question and you can also pose solutions, things that you've been kicking around in your brain, things that you've been thinking about, and you say to yourself, if we could just do it this way, I think it could be better. Or if this thing is really this isn't working so well for me, I think this could be better. Or this is working really well, and I think we should keep it this way, okay? So I would love to hear your suggestions. This is about perspective and making sure that we have students' perspectives. After all, we work for you, right? We work for you. And so we want to make sure that we hear your voice and to know that your voice is important in this school system. So this year, you've heard me talk a lot about literacy. And I love to see the heads nodding. That means you really have. That's great. You've heard a lot about literacy this year because literacy is fundamental. It's not just reading and writing, right? We've always, in school, since the beginning of time, we've always had you read or write. Read and write. But this is about reading and writing and listening, speaking, thinking across all of your subject areas. It's not where you're just reading and writing when you are in English, but it's also reading and writing when you're in your math courses, when you're taking your algebra courses, when you're working in your science classes as well, right? And in health and all of your special areas, so that you are able to think and react and respond like mathematicians, like historians, like scientists. Remember that you will soon be taking the SAT and SAT, right? The SAT now is not just where you read a passage and then you answer questions. The SAT now is where you have to think about things, you have to analyze, you need to synthesize the information, look at charts and graphs, and you can do that. And I know that you're seeing that many times in your classwork now. It's not just about reading and then responding. It's about reading and thinking through it, referring back to passages, finding evidence. This sounds familiar, right? Finding evidence in the text. I see a lot of smiles. That's wonderful. And so thank you to your teachers because you're finding evidence in your text and you're actually able to state your claim and to make a position. How many people get your news or you find out what's going on in the world just by reading the newspaper? Right. How many get your news from TV? Okay. But how do you basically get your news? Through what? Social media. I knew, right? And see, for me, because I'm old, if I get my news through social media, it's usually through Twitter. But you get yours through, right, through Instagram, right? And so there are so many things coming at you through Instagram. Sometimes you might have a Twitter account or you might have other social media accounts. Be careful with some of them, right? You know what I mean, right? Be careful with some of them. Some of those are not safe. But some of those sources are giving you information from all different places. You're getting it from TV or from your Instagram accounts. And you need to be in a position where you can identify bias, and you can make a position and think for yourselves, right? You need to be able to take in that information because is everything that you read true? No. So you need to be able to make your own decisions. That's part of your growth and your development. To be able to synthesize that information, identify bias, analyze the situation, and decide for yourself. what's true and what isn't true, based on the evidence that you have been presented with, based on the information that's at your fingertips. So we want to help you do that. We want to teach you how to do that responsibly. We want to teach you how to, again, see those literacies through, all the way through in each and every content area. So we're going to dig deeper in that, getting to every single discipline so that you are able to do so fluently. It will mean everything as you enter into high school, as you are entering into college or the military or workforce. This applies to every aspect of your future and how you'll be prepared for that future. Another thing that I want us to focus on are the soft skills. And so we call them soft skills, but I don't think that really they're that soft at all. You know how we have your basic skills of reading and writing and doing and computing and doing your mathematics, but there are other skills that matter too in life, like being able to give a firm handshake, being able to make eye contact, being able to work well with others, even if you don't quite get along with them. When you go into the workforce or when you have a project to work on with somebody in college, you may not even know them, right? But you still have to get the project done. So in our teaching you, we're teaching you how to get along with others, how to collaborate on a project, even if you are coming from different directions and you're working with people whom you don't normally work with. How do you then collaborate? Many times through technology right now, I know that for my husband, for instance, he has to collaborate with people through technology all over the world, right? They don't know each other, but they are Skyping and using other kinds of technology to come together, finding common solutions to see a project through. That's the world that we're living in right now. So in the teaching, we have to make sure that we are working with you to teach you those soft skills as well, because we have to be able to see projects all the way through to the end. And then you've heard me talk a lot about school climate. And that has a lot to do with how you feel when you walk into a building and how safe you feel when you walk into your building. Because we don't come to school to be bullied. We don't come to school to be threatened. And we don't come to school to feel scared. We don't want you to feel scared when you come to school. And we know that sometimes, especially in middle school, not everybody's always nice sometimes, right? So it's not just a matter of people being mean. We can handle that, and we do. But somebody who's repeatedly mean to you and repeatedly intimidating you, we need to help you with that. And you don't have to face that on your own. We also know that we have to build schools in a way that we're keeping you safe. And for our existing buildings, we have visitor systems that will help identify any strangers who are in our building, right? We are really fortunate in Baltimore County because we have school resource officers in each and every one of our middle and high schools, right? Not every school system can say that, so we're very fortunate in that way, where we actually have someone that we can connect with, someone who can help keep us safe. That is definitely an emphasis of this administration, because we want to make sure that you feel safe each and every day that you come to school. I want to make sure that my children are safe, but I consider all of you my children too. And so you have to be safe in school as well. So those are the two focal points that I'm hoping that we can continue forward with and we can continue to progress, making sure that you feel safe in school and making sure that you are, yes, able to read, write, think, compute, and behave in socially acceptable ways, but you're able to do so with great depth for your 21st century learning and understanding. So I'm going to stop talking now. I wanted to give you that overview. And now this is really about your time. And it's just a matter of who's willing to ask the first question. Let's hear from you. You can ask a question or give a suggestion. Yes, sir, right over here.
My name is Marcus. I'm grade 7 from Ridgely Middle School. And I just wanted to ask, what is your priority right now for Baltimore County Public Schools?
Thank you, Marcus. I really appreciate that question. Again, right now, the priority is to make sure that every single one of our students has the benefit of rich and engaging learning and instruction every single day. Our teachers work so hard. And by the way, before we go any further, let's give our teachers and our administrators a round of applause. Thank you. The reason why teaching can be an intense job is because our teachers, we don't have time to necessarily have a bad day, right? You have to make sure that you have engaging instruction every single day. And so that requires a lot of work and a lot of planning, right? And there's a lot that goes into that. So high quality instruction, particularly if we're talking about infusing literacy in every single one of those areas, that is a priority for me as I move throughout the year. Thank you, Marcus, for your question. What's next? Someone on this side, maybe. All right, this side is shy. Oh, no, here we go. There we go. Yes.
My name is Riley. I'm in 7th grade at Pine Grove Middle. And I want to know, how can you ensure a budget for culture, arts, like music and art class?
Yeah. One thing about Baltimore County, thank you for your question. We are rich in the arts, and I want us to continue to be like that. We celebrate the arts. We know that there are so many skills and so much development when it comes to the arts. It makes us a full and well-rounded individual, right? And so we will make sure that we continue the dedication of our budget to supporting the arts. We have a robust arts program. Whether or not it comes to the visual arts or theater or music and dance, we invest